covering the world of professional wrestling. This is the Signature Spot with Chris Toplack.
3, 2, 1.
Thank you very much for tuning into the latest episode of The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. As always, I greatly appreciate your ongoing support, and without your support, this show would cease to exist. It's not just a cute little catchphrase, it's reality. And if you want to support this program, subscribe on YouTube. That's youtube.com/The Signature Spot. You can also listen to this podcast wherever podcasts are available. That's iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Spreaker, and podcast apps such as Overcast. And of course, follow me on social media. The Facebook fan page is The Signature Spot, at Chris Toplack on Twitter. And I just started, brand spanking new, an Instagram account strictly for The Signature Spot, because otherwise I was directing you to my personal page, and typically on there is just food, craft beer, a whole bunch of other nonsense that has nothing to do with professional wrestling. We have a great show lined up for today. Highlights from the week, AEW roster updates, a potential Superstar Shakeup in April, Seth Rollins potentially injured, and I relive the best and worst moments from the Elimination Chamber with my guest, Kyle Scharf.
Your weekly recap.
I hear there was more punting in the Super Bowl than in the movie A Clockwork Orange, so I'm glad I missed that, and specifically the halftime show in favor of Halftime Heat, because Aleister Black, Ricochet, and the Velveteen Dream faced Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, and Adam Cole. It was the first ever match televised at the Performance Center. I actually thought it went off without a hitch. 6 of the best professional wrestlers in the world today, and believe me, the future of the WWE is safe and sound in their hands. Non-stop action. If you were looking for psychology, this probably isn't the best place to look, but nevertheless, 16 minutes of pure bliss. So in case you missed it, watch it on the WWE Network. It is also available on the WWE's social channels as well. On Monday Night Raw, it opened with Stephanie McMahon introducing the man, Becky Lynch. The basis of the conversation centered around Becky's injured knee. Now, Stephanie noted that if Becky doesn't see a doctor and it doesn't get cleared, then she would be forced to suspend Becky Lynch until she does. Now, Lynch responded with, "You're not taking my moment away from me." After Stephanie repeated her phrase about the doctor, Lynch socked her in the face and then proceeded to beat up the chief brand officer. Hailing Becky Lynch as the female Stone Cold Steve Austin seems pretty damn appropriate at the moment, because that's the closest comparison that I can think of. And as Lynch was removed from the building by security, she encountered Rowdy Ronda Rousey, who essentially ran her down for not being professional. I couldn't help but chuckle at that line, since it was Ronda who legitimately no-showed 2 post-fight press conferences following her losses. I digress. Ronda popped back into the scene and simply suggested, "Ice and Advil, bitch." I'm sure we will still see this match at WrestleMania. Ronda Rousey then proceeded to run through Liv Morgan, rest in peace, and Sarah Logan in back-to-back matches. Ruby Riott was smart enough to say, "Not today for me." So Rousey came off looking dominant and confident as ever before. Heavy Machinery, Tucker and Otis, no more last names, they're gone, versus the Lucha House Party, consisting of Grand Metalik and Lince Dorado, the B-Team, and the Revival. It was a 4-way for a shot at the Raw Tag titles. I found the match somewhat underwhelming and hokey. Nevertheless, the Revival, thankfully, emerged with their arms raised, and they earn a shot against Rude and Gable. Perhaps finally, they will be champions again. Wishful thinking. Kurt Angle appeared in the ring in what appeared to be his retirement speech. At least that's maybe what he planned it to be. He ran down his list of accomplishments, which in reality could have legitimately taken up half the show, because Angle is that damn good. And he referenced the 3 I's. Do you remember what they were? Well, in this case, he noted that now they're the 3 D's: doubt, defeat, and depression. Both Drew McIntyre and Baron Corbin proceeded to interrupt the Olympic gold medalist. Drew noted that Angle would keep showing up until someone did something drastic, basically alluding to the fact that he would be the one to do something drastic. Fortunately, Braun Strowman came to the rescue, which set up the main event. Sasha Banks and Bayley defeated Nikki Cross and Alicia Fox in a qualifier for the Elimination Chamber match that will determine the WWE Women's Tag Champions. It's the first ever, by the way. And the pre-match attack on Banks and Bayley really put their championship ambitions in serious doubt, but they fought through and they won a solid little match. I like the pairing of the two crazies essentially bonding together because, spoiler, they're both insane in Nikki Cross and Alicia Fox. Then Road Dogg appeared. He did his ladies and gentlemen DX stick. Jeff Jarrett made his appearance, got his gimmick over, and then he treated us or tortured us, depends on what side of the fence you're on, to "With My Baby Tonight." And then Elias fought Jeff Jarrett. He won the match. But Double J got the last laugh after smashing a guitar on his back, which did not break, by the way. Was that guitar even gimmicked? That looked like a stiff shot that you're going to feel in the morning. Then there was a very odd segment featuring an overly scripted and far from believable Dana Brooke, surprise, surprise, claiming that she would defeat Natalya. None the wiser, Natty removed her trendy AirPods, to which she wondered what the hell even happened because she did not even hear a peep. Those suckers must feature some great noise-canceling tech. Next, we had Finn Balor versus Lio Rush, since Bobby Lashley mentioned that he needed to face someone his own size. Oh, by the way, Bobby Lashley made the following claims: "I'm better than Brock Lesnar. I can beat Brock Lesnar in a wrestling match, in a ring, in an octagon. I can beat Brock Lesnar in my sleep. Sign me up, I want to see it." Balor defeated Rush following a beautiful coup de grace for the win. Alexa Bliss returned to host a Moment of Bliss. Her guest was the oddly mute EC3, never had a chance to speak, who was interrupted by not only Nia Jax, but Dean Ambrose as well. This eventually led to Dean Ambrose facing EC3 in an impromptu match. EC3 earned the victory in a very quick performance. Didn't really do much for him. I was hoping for something a little bit more substantial than a 3-minute scrap that lacked drama, but that's the beauty of time restraints. Main eventing the show was Kurt Angle and Braun Strowman versus Drew McIntyre and Baron Corbin. The finish was quite mind-boggling, though. Strowman attacked Baron Corbin by throwing him into the steel steps. Since Braun wasn't the legal man, it was apparently a DQ finish. At least that's what Corey Graves attempted to rationalize. Overall, it was a long, tiring, uneventful episode. Those 3 hours are just so much to get through. Over to SmackDown, the show opened with Charlotte gloating about being healthy, but a suspended Becky Lynch arrived. She made her way through the crowd, and after some bickering, Triple H appeared and told Charlotte to scram. Then Triple H calls Becky a self-destructor and that she is looking for a way out of the match against Ronda Rousey. Says she did so by showing up recklessly on Raw the night after the Rumble to challenge Rousey. As Triple H looked to leave the ring, Becky started to ask about Stephanie, which again, earlier you heard, she clocked her in the face, beat her up, and Becky was essentially mocking her. So this leads the COO of the company to return. Triple H questioned the legitimacy of her knee injury and believes she's simply scared. And as expected, right on cue, Becky slapped Triple H to close the segment. It was a great way to kick off the show, much like Raw. Gallows and Anderson took on the makeshift team of Rusev and Shinsuke Nakamura. It was a competitive and enjoyable match in my eyes that saw Nakamura and Rusev earn the victory. Did we just become best friends? Yep, I think so. Next, we had Mustafa Ali versus Randy Orton. I'm going to simply state 3 things. Mustafa Ali is a bona fide star who deserves this push. It was arguably the best Randy Orton match in recent memory. And finally, that was easily one of the best RKOs in years. In case you missed it, head over to one of my social channels. I posted the little video there. Mustafa Ali was primed to hit his inverted 450 splash. Orton grabbed a hold of his leg, yanked him off the top rope, and hit the RKO. Flawless execution by both men here. Wow, that's all I can say. Also, Mustafa Ali has quite the shiner. I'm not sure if it was a kick or a punch from Randy Orton, but that black eye looks brutal. Go back and look at the photo of it that he posted on social media. Daniel Bryan received a great reaction from his home state of Washington. Basically, both he and Rowan confirmed that Daniel Bryan is the planet's champion, and the crowd ate out the palm of their hands, especially Daniel Bryan's. Rose and Sonya Deville defeated Naomi and Carmella in the iconic duo. Apparently, Naomi and Carmella were also added to the Elimination Chamber match to crown the first ever women's tag team champions. Did any team from SmackDown even earn their spot? They were essentially handed every single opportunity to be featured in the match, while the tag teams on Raw had to earn their way in. It doesn't seem fair whatsoever. And then there's the main event. It featured Daniel Bryan versus Jeff Hardy. Hardy was awarded the DQ victory following interference from Rowan. Samoa Joe appeared out of nowhere to lock Daniel Bryan in the Coquina clutch. All competitors appeared, such as Ali and Orton. AJ Styles made his illustrious entrance, cleared house to conclude SmackDown. Wasn't the strongest episode, but far better, in my opinion, than Raw, which at 3 hours, it just tends to drag and is such an effort to get through.
The latest industry news and rumors.
Seth Rollins out of in-ring action. It was initially reported by Post Wrestling that Seth Rollins' injury will keep him out of in-ring action for roughly about a month, but he's still going to be appearing on upcoming episodes of Raw to promote his match against Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 35. Will AJ Styles stay or will he go? Apparently, AJ Styles' contract with the WWE is expected to expire in April, just after WrestleMania 35. PW Insider noted the following about AJ Styles. We are told that the two sides have been in discussions for some time, and the WWE has made a strong play to keep Styles. Now, here's my take on the situation. I'm expecting him to accept the offer, wrestle for another year or two, retire, and then propose a position at the Performance Center. At least logically speaking, that would be an outstanding way for him to go out, other than take a chance and go elsewhere. An upcoming international Superstar Shakeup in April. Could it be possible? During a promotional video which aired on Sportsnet 360 in Canada, which I caught, by the way, it advertised the first ever international Superstar Shakeup for April 15th and April 16th at the Bell Center in Montreal. If true, that's some pretty big news. Is AEW about to sign a big WWE star? Twitter account at WrestleVotes, which, by the way, has been far more accurate than many wrestling websites, tweeted the following. Seems like the first real shot has been fired. Source says AEW has made an outstanding offer to a current big-time WWE superstar, an offer that is almost too good to turn down. Things are really about to get interesting. Now, who could this be? Many are speculating it could be Randy Orton, who has expressed interest, reportedly, in chatting with the new organization. Now, keep in mind, he's pretty close with Cody Rhodes, so it could be a possibility. Speaking of AEW, they just added a new addition to the roster, British wrestler Jimmy Havoc. Very well known on the European scene. StarCast 2 announced some pretty big names ahead of their event in support of AEW Double or Nothing. Bruce Pritchard, Tony Schiavone, Sean Mooney, Sting, and the excellence of execution, Bret the Hitman Hart, arguably the greatest storyteller in professional wrestling history, have all been added to StarCast 2. Both Sting and Bret Hart, amazing gets. Pre-sale starts Tuesday, February the 12th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. General public sale Friday, February 15th at noon Eastern Standard Time. Also, man, and when I heard this, I thought, I need to be there. A Brian Pillman retrospective panel is set to be one of the events that will take place at StarCast 2 in Las Vegas this May, with the announcement of the actual event, Double or Nothing, plus Sting and Bret Hart at StarCast 2, along with this retrospective panel and Brian Pillman. I'm thinking, I need to be there. I need to make sure I'm there. There's just too many fantastic things going on that are can't miss. A tweet from Impact that I found very interesting this week. A former world champion in Impact Wrestling will return to main event United We Stand on April 4th. Find out who this Friday on Impact. So tomorrow we will find out who this is going to be. There's speculation it could be Mr. Anderson, Alberto Del Rio, James Storm, RVD, just to name a few. Up next, I'm joined by writer and dear good friend of the show, Kyle Scharf, as we relive the best and worst Elimination Chamber moments.
Our topic of the week.
They call it chaos in a cage. Actually, I'm not even sure if they call it that, but I'll call it that. It is the Elimination Chamber. There have been many fantastic, memorable moments and some not so great. So today, we're going to be going over the best and worst Elimination Chamber moments. But first, Kyle, some Elimination Chamber facts. While it was Eric Bischoff who introduced the Elimination Chamber, it was actually the brainchild of Triple H. This further supports the fact that he's a visionary, always thinking ahead.
Absolutely. His take on the War Games match, since Vince wouldn't let him have that for another, 16 years?
Super genius, baby. You try to copy, but you can't.
Nobody can
touch the man can dream down the roads. The match was initially a brand exclusive for Raw. Many tend to forget about that, but it was actually Eric Bischoff that introduced it and said that this was going to boost the ratings, so to speak, for them.
Yeah, wasn't it originally kind of like their take, since SmackDown had kind of taken over Hell in a Cell at that point?
Yeah. That's originally what it was supposed to be. Now, of course, Shawn Michaels was the winner of the very first Elimination Chamber match. That was back in 2002. And then the design was tweaked recently back in 2017. Cost a couple $1 million to really do this with, of course, the LED lights. But also a big notable addition was the padding on the floor of the chamber, which to me was actually a good idea because you don't need to keep risking your health as you're taking back bumps on that relentless steel floor.
Yeah, it's a hell of a lot better for the talent involved, but I don't know. I still like the look of the original chamber. I think it's more imposing, obviously, even if you take out that steel floor, the way it was guided over, or kind of like a curve, whereas now it's a little more squared off.
It's like a box, right?
Yeah, it just looked better in the old days to me, but maybe I'm just a homer for the, what I kind of grew up with.
That's true. Now, also, last year was the very first women's Elimination Chamber match. Of course, it was won by Alexa Bliss. So those are the facts. I wanted to first start off on a high note and talk about some of the best Elimination Chamber moments. So I'm going to have to go back to 2002 with the very first Elimination Chamber. It was full of many memorable moments, but how about RVD's frog splash from the very top of that pod from that 2002, and it was actually at Survivor Series.
Yes, it was almost trachea crushing, you could say.
It was, but it was a hell of a spot. It was also the same event, as I noted earlier, where Shawn Michaels won the world title, and that was following his retirement back in 1998. So that was his big coup de grace, his return, his crowning achievement, to basically say, I'm back with the exclamation mark.
Absolutely. I believe that was the match where he did it in the doo-doo brown, ugly tights, but wasn't that only his second match back after the SummerSlam match with Triple H?
I believe so. So it was a huge moment for him because that match with Triple H, many thought that could be a one-off, but because he performed so well and his body was holding up so well, they kept momentum going. And then, of course, as we know, he wrestled up until about 2010.
Yeah, if I recall from reading Jericho's book, he was kind of one of the guys that really got in Sean's ear. It was like, you're still killing it out here. You got more in the tank. And that obviously led to what many would probably say, myself included, was a even better run than his initial run.
It's debatable, but I would tend to agree just because he had so many memorable matches, and I believe as though that psychology was really starting to settle in as well, too, and of course, just maturity as a performer and as a human being as well.
Yeah, a lot. No, none of that, calling Vader stupid because he missed a spot or freaking out in the ring, and just more of the professional guy that you could even say arguably the greatest ever.
Very debatable, and I would not really argue that point either. Now, we skip a little bit ahead. It's just a year ahead, but it was Goldberg spearing Chris Jericho through a pod at Elimination Chamber. That was SummerSlam 2003.
Yes, actually a really great chamber match. You know, I believe that was the one where Nash was in there, in and out. But the rest of the contestants in there were just having a great match. But then that horrible ending, which, you know, they needed to do to get to that one-on-one match between H and Goldberg. But that was there was a lot of good spots in that one. Was Orton in that one? I think that was like his first real main event taste.
I think it may have been his very first one. Now, I do know that this was probably the most dominant performance we've ever seen with Goldberg in there. I believe he eliminated 3 individuals as well.
Maybe one of his better performances in that initial run that he had in 2003, 2004.
So I'm going to skip ahead many years, actually 6 years, to 2009. It was No Way Out. Edge was the first person eliminated, thus losing the WWE Championship. Now, later on that evening, he viciously attacked Kofi Kingston, and he forced him out of the match after a concerto to the steel steps. Now, Edge enters into the match, and he captured the World Heavyweight Championship. You win some, you lose some, but there's a reason why he owns the moniker The Ultimate Opportunist.
Oh man, I wish you hadn't said that. I was building myself up to go with something about him being the ultimate opportunist.
And he was.
I don't know if there was a guy during that era who took the moniker to heart more so than he did. It's so weird, you know, watching now him on the Edge and Christian show, and it's such a departure from that character he was playing. But man, Edge, I think, gets overlooked a lot in terms of greatness, and that was, I still remember like marking out like a nerd when he came out and took out Kofi, and as soon the only downside to that was as soon as he got in that match, you knew he was walking out with the strap.
Yeah, that's very true. Now, you mentioned how he is severely underappreciated or underrated. I would probably put him in my top 10 of the greatest all-around performers in WWE history. So I'm putting him up on quite the plateau there.
Yeah, knowing you as long as I have, and knowing your standards of excellence for which wrestlers you like, because obviously we have very similar taste in our professional wrestling, that is definitely high praise.
And he definitely deserves it. Now, also 2009, No Way Out. How can you forget about Jeff Hardy landing a swanton bomb off the top of the pod, similar to what we saw with RVD? I believe this was even more of a risk, though.
Yeah, because there wasn't a lot of room between the top of the pod and the chamber. So, you know, one slight miscalculation, much like, you know, back when they would do the spears off the ladders and that, and you're out of commission. So could have gone very bad, but thankfully it did not.
Well, that's very true. Now, let's also move ahead as well, too. To me, I'm just going to cite for the record, this is my personal favorite moment, but Shawn Michaels enters the Elimination Chamber unannounced so he could cost The Undertaker the World Championship. Now, I do want to, for full disclosure, provide the context of how this occurred. So Undertaker turned down Shawn for a rematch at WrestleMania 26 after Shawn failed to win the Royal Rumble in order to challenge The Undertaker for the championship. He realized what he needed to do to earn that rematch. So in order to earn the rematch, he needed to cost The Undertaker the championship. It needed to be around the waist of someone, anyone other than The Undertaker. So Shawn appears out of nowhere, pops up in the cage there in the Elimination Chamber. He hits The Undertaker, I should say, with sweet chin music. Chris Jericho, being the ultimate opportunist here, takes advantage of the situation, and he becomes the new World Heavyweight Champion. So again, my personal favorite moment, just due to the fact that it leads to arguably one of the biggest rematches in pro wrestling history.
Yeah, absolutely. If you go back and watch that running up that hill hype video, it's such a pivotal moment in the story. And a lot of people also forget that set up the Jericho Edge match for this title, since Edge had been the surprise. Was he number 30 when he won, or number 29?
I believe he was number 30. I went back and watched that one recently, but he was I think he may have actually been 30, yeah. Somebody can call us out on it if he wasn't, but I believe he was either 29 or 30.
Absolutely. And yeah, had the big mountaineer beard, but it set up so many things, just beautifully done. Absolutely one of the most pivotal moments, and I don't think I can argue with you. That may also be my favorite chamber match moment, other than, of course, what we talked about before we went on the air, which I'm sure we'll get to.
Absolutely. We also skip ahead another year. How about John Morrison scaling the structure back in 2011? Dropping from the top, his parkour paid off. In this case, he came crashing down on Sheamus. Talk about a daredevil.
That guy was, to this day, is still nuts. Like, you see the parkour that he does. I've watched some videos, and like that movie that he did as a bounty hunter, and like the opening scene, it's just like him running across buildings like he's Spider-Man. It's unbelievable. I don't know how a human can do that, but that's, me as a fat guy, Mark, in my basement.
Let's move ahead another couple of years. I don't believe that there have been a lot of outstanding moments in recent memory, but one that I did enjoy was Bray Wyatt winning the WWE Championship inside the Elimination Chamber.
Yes, I remember that vividly because I was in Florida on vacation with my family and watched the event on my phone, hoping that Bray Wyatt would win. Unfortunately, the run that he had with the title was nothing to write home about, but it was one of those ones where you can look back and say the moment of it happening was fantastic and well done, even if the run that followed was a little subpar.
Absolutely. And by the way, most appearances in the Elimination Chamber, can you guess who it was?
I'm going to say Hunter or Orton.
It was actually Chris Jericho with 8, and he only won just once. And that was, of course, with the help of Shawn Michaels. So that kind of runs down a lot of the best moments. Were there any that you think, in your opinion, deserve to be on that list that perhaps we did miss?
I was going to say the Taker moment with Jericho and Michaels. Was that also the one where Taker got burned by the pyro coming out and was dousing himself in the pod with water because he didn't want to, or he was like, I'm not missing this match.
I believe it actually was. And that, of course, changed the trajectory of where pyro went, because basically the subject had to leave the stage before they actually set it off, which to me makes sense anyway. That seems to be Pyro 101.
You would imagine so, and I'm very sure the gentleman in charge of that still lives in fear for his life if he has not been taken out already. And then the Bray one was one that kept popping out in my head, and then of course the trachea crushing of Triple H in the original match.
Do you think that every single time the Elimination Chamber rolls around that the Undertaker calls that pyro guy and says, "Hey, jackass, you will rest in peace"?
I can only hope that is what happens. Absolutely. But I would imagine that guy still fears for his life every time that the event rolls around.
So, best Elimination Chamber match before we go to the worst chamber moments. I'm voting for 2002, the original, followed by 2010. That's where Jericho defeated CM Punk, John Morrison, Rey Mysterio, R-Truth, and The Undertaker.
Yeah, I've gone back and watched some chamber matches recently. I don't know if it really gets much better than that original one. It was just so revolutionary at
Star
the time.
power, Booker T, Jericho, Kane, RVD, Triple H, Shawn Michaels. How do you top that?
Yeah, and all of those guys were at the top of their game. Like Booker, I truly believe didn't fully come into his own in WWE until the King Booker run.
Raise your pinky.
Yes, raise the pinky. RVD, I think, was at the height of his popularity, even if it took a few more years for them to give him the title. Kane was at his coolest back then because he hadn't lost the mask yet, and we were, I think that was before the whole Katie Vick thing, maybe slightly after, but he was still kind of cool. Hunter obviously was in the midst of the Reign of Terror, and then Michaels coming back and looking like he hadn't missed a step. Like, the star power in that was undeniable.
And Jericho, of course, in 2002, a very underappreciated year for him.
Yes, very much. Everyone forgets the guy headlined WrestleMania, and yeah, it got overshadowed by Hogan and Rock, but it's still a main event of WrestleMania, and he had some great matches throughout the year with Hunter. I think they had a great last man standing match in the summer, and just, you can never really say Jericho's off his game at any point really beyond 1998.
Yeah, he's always been the Maverick, the David Bowie of professional wrestling, right?
Absolutely. Like, the amount of times he's reinvented himself is, I can't even fathom how he continues to do it. And now, we're entering into another stage with what's going to happen. But that's a story for another show, I'm sure.
Worst Elimination Chamber moments. I don't have a ton of them, and I'll tell you why. The rationale is I feel as though many Chamber moments were just kind of meh. I can't really sway them one way or the other, but there are some that are undeniably bad, that can spark nightmares that you reflect on, and it leaves your body trembling, leaves your body shivering. And I have 3 words: December to dismember.
Absolutely, that's one of the worst ones. There's another one that's ringing out in my head, which would be the Intercontinental one where Ryback won, because if you want to look at some kind of downgrade, Intercontinental title, Daniel Bryan to Ryback. That hurts.
Yeah, so Daniel Bryan won the Intercontinental Championship, and of course, I believe that was at WrestleMania 31. He was forced to relinquish the title, and then it led to the hot mess of Ryback, King Barrett, which I just was not a fan of that gimmick, Mark Henry, R-Truth, Sheamus, Dolph Ziggler. And again, it felt as though it was a bit of a step down. I'm not knocking all of those performers, because in their own right, they each had some good moments. It just did not click in that match.
No, nothing clicked in that match. I think that was the same event where they had the first tag team Elimination Chamber
2015.
As well. That was another hot mess.
It was. You had the New Day, and they defeated the Ascension, the Lucha Dragons, Los Matadores, the Primetime Players, and also Tyson Kidd and Cesaro. And it just was a colossal mess.
Yeah, the only thing I remember from that was the recreation of John Morrison's parkour with, I believe it was Kalisto.
Yes.
Climbing up at the very top and then falling down. And I don't even think he landed the move that he was going for. Mm-mm. I think he just fell on top of somebody and pinned them. It might have been like Victor from the Ascension. But that was just, those two, and just December to Dismember, geez, that's a show in and of itself.
Let me throw in another one for you, and then I do want to focus on December to Dismember just because it's just far too attractive to ignore. How about this one? No Way Out 2008. Batista, Undertaker versus Big Daddy V, Great Khali, MVP, and Finlay. Are you telling me that Big Daddy V and Great Khali was the best that you could do? I mean, to me, easily one of the weakest periods in recent memory in the WWE.
My head hurts now. It's just,
you forgot about that.
I absolutely, I remember like the period where Big Daddy V was something they were trying to do, and you know what? I've heard great stories about Nelson Frazier, Mabel, Viscera, whatever. That he was a great guy, but it never worked.
Who pitched that? I want to know who went back and said, Vince, I know who should be the face of the company. Big Daddy V. Like, they should have been fired on the spot.
Well, I'm going to guess it was probably Johnny Ace, given how many...
Well, I think it should be Big Daddy V. He sounds like he'd be a really good performer for us. Look at all the flab he has.
Look, we could do a WrestleMania main event, Big Daddy V and Great Khali. It'll sell out the Hoosier Dome.
Oh, God.
Oh, jeez.
So,
Yeah, like, but you started there and you're like, Batista, Undertaker. I was like, okay, that doesn't sound too bad. And then you threw in Big Daddy V and
Great
Great
Khali.
Khali, and immediately it's like, oh, this is hopeless. And then Finley and MVP, who, don't get me wrong, they're great talents.
Not
great,
main eventers, though.
Not main eventers. Great upper mid card. Great hands in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
Finley, everything he's done for, the women's wrestling and everything backstage.
An unsung hero.
I'm a huge Finley fan.
Me too.
I've always loved him.
He's legit. That's why I appreciate him, is that he works snug, but he doesn't hurt anybody.
Do you remember, not to go too far off track, but Uncensored 96, which is, of course, one of the worst shows ever. Him and Regal had a match, and he clocked Regal right in the face because they were having a snug European-style match, and broke his nose. And it started bleeding immediately because it's broken, and he clocked him in the face. But WCW at the time didn't allow blood, so they had to film the rest of the match on, like, the wide cam. And it was just a cluster, but I've always, even that was back when he still had that long gray mullet, but I don't even know. You know what? He wasn't even Finley yet at that point. I think he was still the Belfast Bruiser.
Ugh.
But it was, two of my favorite underutilized talents of all time, but what a bad match. But yeah, Finley, and I've always been a fan of MVP. I thought, again, like you said, not a main eventer, but certainly a guy. I remember the matches he had with name redacted for the U.S. title back and forth, and they were some great matches.
They were absolutely. I think they had great chemistry, and Benoit elevated him.
Absolutely, I think Benoit made him back in the early run that he had, but he was always hindered as well by that horrible gear choice.
He was. It wasn't going to propel him to the main event, that's for sure. So before we wrap up and we sign off here, December to Dismember, Paul Heyman's idea was for CM Punk to win, which the Big Show and others were on board for. But of course, it was Bobby Lashley who emerged victoriously, and no one cared. You could hear a pin drop. You had Test in the match as well, too. Nothing about this reeked ECW other than CM Punk in my eyes.
Yeah, because I believe Sabu was supposed to be in the match too, and they pulled him saying he was hurt. The same guy who wrapped his own arm up because the bicep ripped up from the barbed wire match that he had with Terry Funk back in ECW, but he was hurt from a backstage attack and replaced by Hardcore Holly, which there's a noticeable upgrade. That whole show was just snake bit. Like, it started off so hot too. I remember watching it live. I paid to watch December to Dismember. I think we might have watched it together.
Regrettably, and not because of your presence, but just regrettably in general.
Yeah, because it started off with that great tag match with the Hardys and Eminem, and it was like, oh, right, this is going to be a great show. ECW's, the live shows have been not that great, but maybe we got something here. And then from there, it was just, oh, God, it's just terrifying. And then the choice to have Bobby Lashley come out of that match as the winner, have CM Punk be the first one eliminated. The only people that were over in that match were RVD and Punk. Mm-hmm. Big Show was at probably it's pot calling kettle black because I'm a fat guy, but at his flabbiest. And I think he would leave shortly thereafter, get back in shape and not reappear till the Floyd Mayweather thing. Test was good for what he was, but he was not over. Mm-hmm. Hardcore Holly, you might argue, has never been over. And then Lashley, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but WWE, I don't think has ever gotten Lashley right, but TNA did. Mm-hmm. And it's weird to say, TNA did something better than WWE. And this is TNA when it was still befing, this whole rebranding to Impact where it's gotten good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, that match just... I tried going back and watching it on the network one day. And, yeah, I couldn't do it. And I've watched all of Uncensored 96. And I could not get back through. Yeah, horrible.
So we relived some great moments and not so great moments, but one thing is for sure, Elimination Chamber 2019 looks like a pretty solid card coming up on February 17th. We'll have predictions coming up right before then. Kyle, thanks for joining me.
You're listening to The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack.
Depending on when you listen to this episode, it could have already happened or could be happening right about now. There's expected to be a pretty substantial announcement from All Elite Wrestling, 9 p.m. in the East, from the MGM Grand. It's the ticket announcement party. Could it be Kenny Omega? Perhaps something else. I am entering this All Elite Wrestling endeavor with realistic expectations. I don't expect it to be immediate competition with the WWE, but I also don't anticipate it's going to fail. I am taking a wait-and-see approach, but let's root for them anyway. Competition is good for everybody. So until next Thursday, hope you have a great weekend. Happy trails to you until we meet again.
This concludes another episode of The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. For new episodes, subscribe on YouTube, Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, or iTunes. And don't forget to follow The Signature Spot on Facebook for exclusive clips, polls, and opinions.